On my 31st birthday, my entire family forgot to call me. No text from my mother, no voicemail from my father, not even a lazy, happy birthday from my brother, Caleb. But that night, when I opened Facebook, I found out they hadn't forgotten how to celebrate. They were all at a country club, under gold balloons, throwing Caleb a party so expensive it looked like a wedding reception. Then my mother finally called me just before midnight. Not to say happy birthday, to ask me for $18,000. That was the moment something in me went quiet. Because a week later, I found the group chat I was never supposed to see. And by the time my family realized what I had done with my bonus, I was already standing on the dock of my own lake house in Michigan. They had spent years calling me the strong one, but they never imagined what would happen when I became strong enough to stop paying for a family that never remembered me. By the time I stepped out of the elevator, my birthday had less than 2 hours left. The hallway outside my Chicago apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the old lights above me. I stood there for a second with my laptop bag digging into my shoulder, my heels pinching my feet, and my phone screen glowing in my hand. No missed calls, no unread texts, not from my mother, not from my father, not from Caleb. 31 years old. And somehow I still checked. I hated that about myself. At work, my day had been almost perfect. I had saved the Belmont account after 3 weeks of crisis calls, rewritten a presentation overnight, and watched our CEO shake my hand in front of the entire strategy team. Outstanding work. Natalie, Mr. Alden Price had said, "You carried this one." Carried. That was the word everyone used for me. At home. My mother used a softer version. "You were always the strong one." It sounded like a compliment when I was little. It meant I didn't cry when Caleb got the bigger room. It meant I understood when my birthday dinner became his baseball banquet. It meant I smiled when my parents said, "Your brother needs us more right now." By 31, I finally understood what it really meant. Strong meant easy to ignore. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. On the kitchen counter sat the little lemon cake I had bought that morning from the bakery near my office. It was barely bigger than my hand, with yellow frosting and my name written in blue icing. Happy birthday. Natalie. At least the girl at the bakery had spelled it right. I took off my blazer, kicked my heels under the counter, and opened my laptop because work was easier than silence. But Facebook was already open from lunch, and the first photo on my feed made my breath stop. There was Caleb, my younger brother, standing under a gold balloon arch at Willow Creek Country Club. His wife, Marissa, leaned against him in a red dress. My father had one proud hand on Caleb's shoulder. My mother stood on his other side, smiling like she had just watched him win an Olympic medal. Behind them hung a banner. "Congratulations, Caleb Ward, top producer of the year." The post had been uploaded 46 minutes ago, on my birthday. I clicked through the photos even though everyone hurt worse than the last. Champagne glasses, a 3-tier cake, my cousins, my aunts, even our old neighbors from Naperville. Everyone had been invited. Everyone except me. The caption under my mother's post read, "So proud of our son. The Ward family legacy continues." I stared at the word son until it blurred. My phone rang at 11:53 p.m. For one foolish second, my chest lifted. "Mom, Natalie." "Sweetheart," she said, bright and rushed. "I'm so glad you answered. Listen, your father and I are planning something special for Caleb next month. With his big year and the new office opening, we thought you could help with the reception. I closed my eyes. What kind of help? Well, you're so organized. Maybe the guest list, the catering, and a contribution. Nothing major. Around 18,000 should cover what's left. The microwave clock changed to 11:54. Mom, I said quietly, today was my birthday. Silence. Then a soft gasp, not of guilt, but inconvenience. Oh, honey. With Caleb's big night, it just slipped my mind. I looked at the little cake on my counter. Then I looked back at my laptop. Beneath the Facebook tab, a new email had arrived from payroll. Performance bonus approved $76,000. Under that, still open from last week, was a real estate listing I had saved and never dared to click twice. 2-bedroom lake house, Western Michigan, private dock, motivated seller. Something inside me went strangely calm. No, I said. My mother paused. No to what? To the reception, to the catering, to the 18,000. Her voice sharpened. Natalie, don't be dramatic. Family supports family. I looked at Caleb's gold balloons on the screen. No, I said again. Family remembers family. Then I hung up before my mother could remind me how strong I was supposed to be. 4 days after my birthday, my mother accidentally invited me into the truth. It happened at 8:12 on Monday morning while I was sitting in my office, trying to prepare for a client presentation I had already rewritten 3 times. My coffee had gone cold. The Chicago skyline stretched beyond the glass wall behind my desk, sharp and gray under a winter sky. Then my phone lit up. Diane Ward added you to Caleb office launch. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then messages began appearing so quickly I could barely read them. My father wrote first. Natalie should contribute at least $18,000. She just received that bonus. And this is exactly what family money should be used for. My throat tightened. Family money, not my money. Not the money I had earned after weeks of late nights, emergency calls, and saving an account that had almost walked away. Family money. My mother replied with a string of hearts. I agree. She's always been practical. She doesn't need much. Caleb has a real opportunity here. Then Marissa wrote, maybe frame it as helping with the reception, not the office. She gets weird when people ask directly. I felt something cold move through my chest. Caleb followed. She'll do it eventually. Nat always says no first, then feels bad. Mom. Just remind her how much Dad worries about the family name. Nat. He hadn't called me Natalie since he needed me to proofread his college applications. A cousin named Elaine chimed in. Didn't Natalie get a huge payout from that ad job? Natalie? With an H. My own family was planning how to spend my bonus, and one of them couldn't even spell my name correctly. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking beneath me. My fingers were steady, but my stomach had turned to stone. It wasn't the first time. Over the past year, I had covered Caleb's rent twice, paid one of his emergency bills, and never once heard him tell our parents how much I had helped. In their version of the story, Caleb was the rising star. I was just the quiet one in the background, holding up the stage. A soft knock came at my door. Jenna Brooks, my closest friend at work, stepped inside with a folder pressed to her chest. You look like you just read your own obituary, she said. I turned my phone toward her without speaking. Her face changed as she read, Oh, Natalie. That almost broke me. Not the messages, not the money, not even the misspelled name. Just the sound of someone seeing the hurt without asking me to explain it. They don't celebrate you, Jenna said quietly. They invoice you. I laughed once, but it came out thin and sharp. Before I could answer, Mr. Alden Price appeared in the doorway. He was already in his charcoal suit, silver glasses in one hand, expression serious. Natalie, before the Belmont call, I wanted you to know accounting finalized your performance bonus. You earned every dollar of it. Every dollar. I swallowed hard. Thank you. After he left, my phone buzzed again. Caleb was calling. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it started again. On the third call, I answered. Hey, he said. Too cheerful. Listen, I need a favor. Of course he did. There's a regional investor coming to the launch reception. You know people in branding. I need you to make it look polished. Mom said you were being emotional about the money thing, but I told her you'd come around. I looked at the group chat still open on my screen. Caleb, I said, keeping my voice calm. Did you know Mom added me to the chat silence? Then a nervous laugh. What chat? The lie landed softly, but it landed. The one where you all discuss my bonus. Another pause. Natalie, don't make this dramatic. There it was. The family emergency switch. When Caleb needed something, it was support. When I noticed the pattern, it was drama. I looked out at the city below me, at all the windows filled with people living lives I knew nothing about. For the first time, I wondered how many of them had also mistaken silence for strength. I have a meeting, I said. Natalie, no. Caleb, I have a life. Then I ended the call. My hands trembled afterward, but not from fear. From the strange, unfamiliar feeling of finally interrupting the script. My mother called it dinner. By the time I pulled up to my parents' house in Naperville that Saturday evening, I knew better. Dinner was what normal families had when they wanted to share food, stories, maybe a bottle of wine. What waited for me behind that white front door was a meeting with candles. The house looked exactly the same as it always had. Brick steps, black shutters, perfect wreath on the door. Even though Christmas was weeks away, my mother believed presentation could fix almost anything, including guilt. She opened the door before I rang the bell. Natalie, she said, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a performance than affection. Please, just be kind tonight. Your father has been very upset. Not happy, belated birthday. Not, I'm sorry. Just a warning. In the dining room, my father sat at the head of the table, already holding a glass of scotch. Caleb and Marissa were on the right side, close together, like a couple in a bank commercial. Marissa wore cream silk and the soft smile of a woman who had never once paid for the room she was standing in. Finally, Dad said, glancing at his watch. We were beginning to wonder if you were coming. I said 7. I replied, It's 6:59. His mouth tightened. My mother rushed toward the kitchen. Let's not start. We sat through 20 minutes of polite torture. Caleb talked about his new office space. Marissa described the marble reception desk she wanted. Dad kept saying things like when this family succeeds and our name still means something. Mom nodded at every sentence as if she were listening to a sermon. I cut a piece of chicken and tasted nothing. Then dessert arrived. My mother placed a chocolate cake in the center of the table, Caleb's favorite. Dad cleared his throat. Natalie, we need to discuss your contribution. There it was. I set down my fork. I already told Mom no. Marissa's eyebrows lifted slightly. like I had used bad language. Dad leaned back in his chair. You said no in the heat of emotion. We're giving you the opportunity to reconsider like an adult. Caleb gave me a small, practiced smile. It's not like we're asking for something crazy. 18,000 would cover the reception gap and help with the office launch. You just got 76. My mother reached for my hand. Honey, you've always been the strong one. Caleb is building something important. I looked at her fingers touching mine. There it was again. The sentence that had followed me my whole life. Strong enough to understand. Strong enough to wait. Strong enough to be forgotten. I pulled my hand back. I'm not giving Caleb $18,000. Silence fell so sharply I could hear the ice shift in my father's glass. His voice dropped. Excuse me, I'm not paying for his reception. I'm not helping with the office. And I'm not pretending this is family support when it's really just another bill with my name on it. Caleb's smile disappeared. You're jealous. I almost laughed. Of what? Of the attention? Marissa said softly. Natalie, it's obvious this birthday thing made you emotional. This birthday thing, I repeated. My mother's eyes filled instantly. Please don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm answering a question. Dad put his glass down hard enough to make my mother flinch. You are 31 years old, sitting in my house, acting like a child because we missed one birthday. One I asked. No one answered, because everyone at that table knew it wasn't one. It became emotional, I said, looking at Marissa, when my birthday became less important than his table decorations. Caleb's face reddened. Dad stood. I will not tolerate disrespect in this house. Then we finally agree on something, I said, pushing back my chair, because neither will I. My mother started crying then, real tears or practiced ones. I couldn't tell anymore. Natalie, don't leave like this. Families fight, but they don't walk away. I picked up my coat. No, I said. Families remember who they're asking to stay. Outside. The cold air hit my face so hard my eyes watered. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. For a full minute, I sat behind the wheel, breathing through the tightness in my chest. Then I opened my phone, not to call my mother, not to apologize. I opened the lake house listing in Michigan. 2 bedrooms, private dock, western shoreline, motivated seller. For the first time all night, I smiled. Not because I had a plan yet, because I finally knew what my answer was. The listing had been sitting in my saved folder for almost 3 months. I had found it one night after a 12-hour workday, the kind of night when my apartment felt less like a home and more like a place where I stored clean clothes between meetings. I hadn't been seriously looking then. I had only typed Lake House, Michigan because I wanted to imagine a life where weekends belonged to me. The house was 2 hours and 40 minutes from Chicago, tucked along a quiet stretch of western Michigan shoreline. 2 bedrooms, white siding, a small screened porch, a narrow wooden dock reaching into the water like a question. The asking price was not ridiculous, but it was not small either. $392,000. Before the bonus. I had closed the tab every time I looked at it. After that dinner, I called the realtor. Her name was Beth Palmer, and she sounded surprised when I asked for the earliest private showing. Are you relocating? She asked. No, I said. I'm choosing. The word came out before I could dress it up into something more acceptable. 3 days later, I drove to Michigan alone. The road out of Chicago gave way to open sky, bare trees, and long stretches of highway where no one knew my last name. For the first time in days, my phone sat silent in the passenger seat. My mother had called every morning since the dinner. My father had left one voicemail, clipped and cold. "You are making this family very uncomfortable." Natalie. That was the thing about my family. They never called pain a problem until it embarrassed them. Beth was waiting in the driveway when I arrived. The lake house looked smaller than it had in the photos, but somehow better. Real. A little weathered at the edges. The front steps needed paint. One shutter hung slightly crooked. The flower beds were sleeping under old leaves. I loved it before I unlocked the door. Inside, sunlight spilled across hardwood floors. The kitchen was bright, with a window over the sink facing the water. The living room had a stone fireplace and built-in shelves that made me think of books, framed photos, quiet Sunday mornings. Not performance, not obligation. Peace. "The seller's already moved to Arizona," Beth explained as we stepped onto the back deck. "They're motivated, but there's been interest." "Have you been pre-approved?" I nodded. I had done that part quietly weeks earlier, almost embarrassed by my own hope. My credit was excellent. My savings were solid because I had spent years being careful, years telling myself I didn't need vacations, new furniture, or anything that looked like indulgence. Then came the bonus. $76,000. Enough for a strong down payment. Enough to make the numbers work. Enough to stop waiting for permission. Beth looked over her clipboard. "Do you want to bring anyone else to see it?" "Parents, partner, friend." The old Natalie would have hesitated. The new one looked out at the lake. "No," I said. "This one is just for me." That evening, I called Jenna from a small diner near the highway. I told her about the house, the mortgage estimate, the inspection, the down payment, the tiny dock that made me feel like I could breathe. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Natalie, this doesn't sound impulsive. It sounds overdue." I laughed, but my eyes burned. The next week moved quickly. Inspection, counteroffer, bank documents, insurance quotes. My inbox filled with words that sounded terrifying and beautiful. Appraisal, escrow, closing date. My mother kept calling. Caleb sent one text. "Still waiting for you to stop punishing everyone." I didn't answer. On Friday afternoon, I sat across from a title officer in a quiet room that smelled like printer paper and coffee. I signed my name so many times my wrist ached. Natalie Ward, correctly spelled. On the final page, the title officer slid a small envelope across the table. "Congratulations," she said. "You're a homeowner." I drove straight to the lake house with the keys in my coat pocket. The sun was already dropping when I walked down to the dock. The water moved in soft, dark ribbons beneath the winter sky. Wind lifted my hair from my shoulders, cold enough to sting, clean enough to wake me up. I had spent 31 years being called strong by people who meant useful. For the first time, standing there alone, I wondered what strength could mean if it belonged only to me. Behind me, the house waited. Not a gift from anyone. Not a reward for being quiet. Mine. I waited 3 weeks before I posted the picture. Not because I was ashamed, because I wanted the house to feel like mine before anyone else tried to put their fingerprints on it. By then, I had bought a secondhand dining table from a retired couple in Grand Rapids, painted the crooked front steps, and replaced the rusted mailbox with one that stood straight at the end of the gravel drive. Jenna helped me hang curtains in the living room. Mrs. Whitaker, my elderly neighbor from Chicago, mailed me a box of dish towels with tiny blue sailboats embroidered along the edges. The note inside said, "Every home needs something soft. I cried harder over those towels than I had over my mother forgetting my birthday. On Sunday morning, I made coffee in my new kitchen and carried the mug out to the back deck. The lake was still and silver under the early light. I stood barefoot on the cold boards, wrapped in a sweater, and took one simple photo. Nothing dramatic. Just me, holding coffee, with the water behind me. The caption took longer than the picture. Finally, I typed. Birthday gift to myself. Michigan weekends begin now. Then I posted it. For 27 minutes. Nothing happened. Jenna commented first. There she is. Proud of you. Mr. Price liked the photo. 2 co-workers wrote congratulations. Mrs. Whitaker sent a row of blue heart emojis, which made me smile because I knew she had probably asked her granddaughter how to do it. Then my mother called. I watched her name fill the screen. I let it ring. 30 seconds later, my father texted her, "Where did you get money for a lake house?" Not congratulations. Not, it looks beautiful. Not, are you happy? Just an audit. Caleb texted next. So you can buy a house, but you can't help your own brother. Wow. Marissa followed 3 minutes later. Natalie, this is going to hurt your parents. You should have talked to them first. That was when I understood what had really upset them. It wasn't the house. It was the fact that I had made a decision without asking permission. All my life, I had been allowed to succeed as long as my success remained useful to them. I could work late. I could earn bonuses. I could fix problems. I could be the strong one. But I was not supposed to choose myself in a way they couldn't control. By noon, my phone had become a tiny machine of panic. Mom left voicemails. Natalie, call me immediately. Your father is very confused. People are asking questions. You're making this look like we don't support you. That last one almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was honest in a way she hadn't intended. They weren't worried about what they had done. They were worried about how it looked. I turned my phone face down and went back inside. That afternoon, I hosted the smallest housewarming in the history of housewarmings. Jenna came with a basil plant and a bottle of red wine. 2 co-workers brought folding chairs and a basket of snacks. Mrs. Whitaker arrived last, driven by her niece, carrying a homemade quilt in shades of lake blue and pale gray. For the guest room, she said, pressing it into my arms. You didn't have to do this. She patted my hand. Dear, that is exactly why I wanted to. We ate soup from paper bowls because I didn't have enough real ones yet. We sat on mismatched chairs. The fireplace smoked a little before Jenna figured out the damper. Someone spilled wine on the old rug, and no one acted like it was a tragedy. It was imperfect. It was warm. It was mine. As the sun dropped, we stood on the deck with paper cups raised toward the water. To Natalie, Jenna said. For finally buying a place where nobody gets to make her feel small. The others lifted their cups. I looked around at the faces turned toward me. No one wanted money. No one asked what I could do for them. No one called me dramatic for being hurt. They were simply happy I had something good. Later that night, after everyone left, I posted one more photo. The dining table, the quilt, the basil plant in the kitchen window. The caption was shorter this time. First dinner in the lake house. Thank you to the people who show up. My father called within 2 minutes. I didn't answer. Instead, I locked the back door, turned off the kitchen light, and stood in the quiet. For the first time, Their silence felt less like punishment and more like peace. The family dinner was my father's idea. My mother called it a chance to clear the air, which was ward family language for everyone sitting around a table until I apologized for noticing what they had done. I almost didn't go. Then I looked at the small white box sitting on my kitchen table at the lake house. Inside, it was not everything, just enough. A printed copy of the group chat, a few photos from Caleb's birthday parties over the years, a folded page from an old journal I had kept when I was 12, and a one-page list I had typed myself, simple and factual, of every time I had helped Caleb in the past 18 months. No more than that. I didn't want to bury them under evidence. I wanted them to have no place to look away. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mother met me at the door with red eyes and perfect lipstick. "Natalie," she whispered, as if I were returning from war instead of Michigan. "Please don't make tonight harder than it needs to be." I looked past her into the foyer. Dad stood near the dining room, arms crossed. Caleb was behind him, jaw tight. Marissa sat on the sofa scrolling her phone, pretending not to watch me. "I'm not here to make it hard," I said. "I'm here to make it clear." No one answered. Dinner was already on the table, but no one touched much of it. My father tried to begin with small talk about the market. My mother asked if the lake house had heating, as though she hoped it didn't. Caleb stared at his plate. Finally, Dad set down his fork. "This has gone far enough," he said. "The posts, the silence, the way you've embarrassed your mother. People at church are asking why we didn't know about your house." I almost smiled. "There it is," I said. His eyes narrowed. "There, what is the real problem? People asking questions." My mother pressed a napkin to her mouth. "Natalie, we have always supported you." I placed the white box in the center of the table. "Then this should be easy to explain." Marissa sighed. "Is this really necessary?" "Yes," I said. "Because every time I tell the truth, someone in this family calls it drama." I opened the box and took out the photos first. Caleb at 10, standing beside a baseball-shaped cake. Caleb at 16, holding truck keys with a red bow on them. Caleb at 21, surrounded by cousins at a restaurant I recognized because my parents had told me that year they were too tired to come downtown for my birthday dinner. I laid the photos in a neat row. No one forgot how to celebrate. I said, "You just forgot me." Caleb shifted in his chair. My mother began to cry softly. "We didn't mean it that way." I unfolded the journal page next. The paper had yellowed at the edges, but the pencil marks were still clear. I read it aloud. "Maybe next year they'll remember before Grandma calls them." The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. Dad looked away first. Then I slid the printed group chat across the table. My mother reached for it, then froze when she saw her own message. She's always been practical. She doesn't need much. I watched her read it twice. "You didn't call me strong because you admired me," I said quietly. "You called me strong because it made it easier to ignore me." My father's face hardened. "So now you're keeping records against your own family." "No," I said. "I'm keeping proof, because feelings were never enough for you." Finally, I took out the list. Caleb recognized it before anyone else did. His eyes dropped. "It wasn't the first time," I said. Over the past year, I had covered Caleb's rent twice, paid one of his emergency bills, and never once heard him tell our parents how much I had helped. My mother turned to him. "Caleb." He didn't answer. Marissa's face went pale with irritation, not shame. Dad looked confused, and that hurt more than his anger. He truly hadn't known. Not because the information was hidden well, but because he had never thought to ask how Caleb kept landing on his feet. I folded my hands in my lap. So here is what changes tonight. No more rent help. No more emergency transfers. No more client introductions. No more planning parties for people who cannot remember the day I was born. Natalie, Mom whispered, you're breaking this family apart. No, I said. I'm stepping out of the role you gave me. Dad pushed back his chair. You are being ungrateful. For what I asked. For being trained to need less. That stopped him. Not because he agreed, because for once, he didn't have an answer ready. I stood and placed the empty white box back under my arm. The copies are yours to keep, I said. I'm done proving pain to people who benefited from not seeing it. Caleb said my name as I reached the hallway. This time, I didn't turn around. Outside, the night air was cold and clean. I walked to my car without shaking. Behind me, the house glowed warm and golden through the windows. For the first time, it looked less like home and more like evidence. Caleb came to the lake house 6 days later. He didn't call first. I saw his black BMW crawl down the gravel drive just after noon on Saturday, moving slowly like the road itself had made him uncertain. I was in the kitchen, sanding the edge of an old bookshelf I had bought from a thrift store. For a moment, I simply stood there with dust on my hands and watched him park. The old Natalie would have opened the door before he reached it. The new one waited for him to knock. When I finally stepped onto the porch, I didn't invite him in. His eyes flicked past me toward the living room, the fireplace, the windows facing the lake. So this is it, he said. This is it. He shoved his hands into his coat pockets. Mom's a mess. I leaned against the porch railing. That's not why you drove 3 hours? His jaw tightened. For a few seconds. All I could hear was wind moving across the water behind the house. Then he said, Dad didn't know about the rent. No, I said. He didn't. Marissa thought. Don't! I interrupted. He looked down. It was the first time in my life I had seen Caleb Ward without an audience. No parents beaming beside him. No wife smoothing over his mistakes. No room full of people waiting to praise him. Just my brother. Standing on my porch, looking smaller than the version of him our family had built. I knew, he said finally. I didn't speak. I knew they favored me. Not when we were kids. Maybe. But later. His voice dropped. I knew birthdays were bigger for me. I knew Dad talked about my career differently. I knew Mom expected you to help because you always did. The words should have felt like victory. They didn't. They felt like confirmation of something I had been carrying alone for too long. And you let them call me selfish, I said. His face tightened. I did. And jealous. Yes. And dramatic. He swallowed. Yes. I looked past him at the lake, because looking at him made it harder to stay steady. I don't know how to fix this, he said. That's not my job anymore. He nodded slowly, like the sentence had landed somewhere real. I'm sorry. Natalie. It was not enough, but it was the first honest thing he had said to me in years. I folded my arms. Here are the rules. I'm not lending you money again. I'm not making introductions for your office. I'm not planning receptions, smoothing over Mom's feelings, or sitting through dinners designed to make me apologize. He didn't argue. And this house, I continued, is mine. Nobody comes here unless I invite them. Caleb looked toward the door again, then back at me. Fair. I almost smiled at how strange that word sounded between us. He shifted his weight. What do you want me to tell them? The truth, I said. Not when I'm in the room. Not when you're cornered. When I'm not there. And it would be easier to let them blame me. His eyes lowered. That's where you start. He stayed for another minute, maybe two. Then he walked back to his car without asking for a tour. As his BMW disappeared between the bare trees, I expected to feel sad. Instead, I felt space. Not empty space. Breathing space. For the first time, losing my place in the family didn't feel like losing myself. It felt like finally getting myself back. 1 year later, I turned 32 on the back deck of my lake house. The morning opened soft and blue, with sunlight spreading across the water like someone had poured gold over the lake. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, wearing a cotton dress and frosting a lemon cake that leaned slightly to the left. It was not bakery perfect. That made me love it more last year. I had sat alone in my Chicago apartment, staring at a cake I had bought myself and a phone that refused to ring. This year, the house was already alive before noon. Jenna arrived first with flowers and a paper crown she insisted I wear. "Birthday queen," she said, placing it on my head. "It's crooked. So was your first fireplace fire, and we survived that." Mrs. Whitaker came next, holding a covered dish and moving carefully up the porch steps with her niece beside her. She kissed my cheek and looked around the room like she was inspecting a miracle. "It suits you," she said. "What does the piece?" By 2 o'clock, my deck was full of people who had chosen to be there. Co-workers, neighbors, 2 friends from a pottery class I had started taking in the spring. People who brought small gifts, bad jokes, extra ice, and no expectations. No one asked me for money. No one asked me to fix a guest list. No one told me I was too sensitive. We ate grilled chicken and corn from paper plates. Someone opened wine. Jenna lit 32 candles on the lemon cake. And everyone laughed when the wind blew out 3 before I could even make a wish. My phone buzzed on the table. For a second, the old tightness returned. Then I looked. "Caleb, happy birthday. Natalie. I hope today is yours." I stared at the message for a long moment. Not perfect, but truthful enough to let in. A few minutes later, another notification appeared. My mother had sent a photo of a small bakery box sitting on her kitchen counter. The card beside it said, "Happy birthday, Natalie." No missing letters. No nickname. No request attached. Under the photo, she wrote, "I know this does not fix anything. I just wanted to remember on time." I did not cry. I also did not answer right away. That was the new part of me. I no longer treated every small apology like an emergency I had to rescue. Near sunset, when the party had softened into quiet conversations and empty plates, my father texted, "Happy birthday, Natalie." Just 3 words. From him. That was almost a speech. I placed the phone face down and walked to the dock with my slice of cake. Behind me, the lake house glowed with warm windows and laughter. Ahead of me, the water moved gently against the posts, steady and unbothered. For most of my life, I thought being loved meant waiting to be chosen, waiting for the call, waiting for the apology, waiting for my family to finally look across the room and see me. But that year, I learned something quieter. Sometimes the life that saves you is not the one where everyone comes back and says the perfect thing. Sometimes it is the one where you stop standing outside your own happiness, asking for permission to enter. I lifted my fork and took a bite of lemon cake. Too sweet. A little uneven. Mine. That year, I didn't get the family birthday I had begged for all my life. I got something better. I got a birthday that finally belonged to me.